So we're starting a new tradition, guys, where we're gonna pick out an affirmation card. But first, hi. Hey.
Who are we?
I don't know. We forgot.
Our parents would have been so mad.
Our parents. Speaking of, I told my mommy about the podcast. Aww. Okay, you go.
So my affirmation this morning says, there's no such thing as a mistake. Everything happens in divine order. I am being guided to learn and grow.
So yeah, you are.
Nice.
So nice. I'm going to have it like right here. Ooh, maybe we should get her. Yeah. Okay. So this one, mine says, I honor my self-worth by asking for what I want. Hey, I just got to be more aggressive with my approach to life.
Aggressive.
Be aggressive. Agresiva. What's saying? Oh yeah, I was talking to mommy this morning, and I was telling her she was asking me, she's like, what are you doing? I was like, oh, ando en la calle. And she's like, tan temprano. And I was like, yeah, para llegar a la casa temprano tienes que salir a la calle temprano. And then she was like, for what? And then I told her, I was like, oh, es que voy a grabar un episodio. And I forgot I hadn't told her about the podcast because I don't want her to listen to it.
Why not?
Because I say things sometimes about, like, I talk about mommy and my relationship with her, and I don't know if she likes that or not. So I'm like, I'm just gonna, not tell her. Y se me salió hoy.
What did she say?
And she's like, ¿a poco tienes un podcast? And I'm like, yes. And she's like, ¿cómo se llama? And I was like, you're not gonna like the name. And she's like, what is it? I was like, LloronaPeroChingonas. And she just started laughing. But she's like, a mí me gusta escuchar esas cosas. And I was like, well, no escuches el mío. So we will see.
That's so funny because you can literally see how we're scared. We're 28 and we're so scared to tell our parents certain things.
Yeah.
First gen
struggles. Yes. First gen struggles for sure.
Como cuando todavía you need to ask for permission to go out.
Yeah.
And you're like freaking almost 30.
I know.
Wow. We got a little excited in a little bit, but hope everyone is doing great today.
Yeah.
Today we have our very special guest.
We do.
She is someone that I got to meet because of Yesi. Well, we're both meeting her together.
Yeah, we are.
We haven't met her officially in person until today.
Yeah.
But just from hearing all the amazing things that she's doing, I am intrigued to meet her.
Me too. Honestly, I'm very excited for this episode. I think this topic is something that not a lot of people get to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so the person that we are going to be talking about, like the topic today is about like trauma and just like trauma with like immigrating here, migrating here, and what that causes for everyone, right? And so we're really going to want to dive deep into that. And I think, like I said, like it's not talked about a lot.
Mental health in general.
Yeah.
I feel like it's like a taboo topic that if you're like, when we think about mental health and we think about trauma in Hispanic and Latino community, it's kind of like you're crazy. Like if you go to a psychiatrist, or you're crazy if you go to a psychologist. Like all of those things.
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully, once we have our conversation with our guest today, we can encourage our Latino community to seek the help that they need and that they deserve to get. Because I feel like, even me personally, growing up, I could have started therapy a lot sooner than I did if I was motivated to do it.
Yeah.
To do so.
Yeah. I mean, like thinking back on like growing up, I was like, I was definitely depressed in middle school and high school.
Mm-hmm.
I could have used a therapist then too.
Mm-hmm.
But, things happen for a reason. Maybe that wouldn't have gotten me to be a therapist now. So I'm grateful that things happened the way they did. But anyways, how are you doing?
Really good. I really like this affirmation.
Uh-huh.
I feel like we should start doing this more often.
I'm excited, yeah. I'm down for that.
To do like a little affirmation before we start our episodes to get our motivation going.
Yeah, I think so too. Hando, do you want to pick one? El que no quiere salir en nada.
He's camera shy, our producer.
I didn't say it.
Do you want us to read it for you?
No. I already.
Ooh.
So the universe is telling Hamdo to, you need to chill the out. You're not right all the time.
Okay, producer, we get it.
Just kidding. Just kidding.
But what about you? How are you?
I'm feeling pretty good today. I think this is day 4 that I'm coming off my meds and stuff. So slowly but surely, my dosage. I used to take 90 milligrams of a medicine, like duloxetine or Cymbalta, and now I'm at 60 milligrams. So
Is 90 high? I don't know.
honestly, I don't know, but I don't want it to get higher.
Yeah.
But I'm feeling pretty good. I am feeling a lot more like, I think, like in tune with my emotions. Like I do feel myself a little bit more emotional. I feel
Like
like,
sensitive in a way?
yeah, like a little bit more sensitive.
Suspirito ahorita vas a llorar.
Yes, babe.
Okay.
Like the dream that I had this morning. I'm not gonna talk about it because I'm not gonna put that out in the universe anymore. I woke up and I was crying. So yeah, no, I don't know.
You're a sensitive bitch right now.
I'm always a sensitive bitch,
that's
but I'm an
true.
extra sensitive bitch today.
Be aware, guys. Be aware of what
And
you say
this
to
is-
Yesi from here on out.
Be nice to me. But I think that, like, yeah, I think that, like, this is good. Like, I need to learn to be okay with just, like, my raw nervous system and stuff. So, yeah. But I feel really good. I've been learning a lot of things these past weeks. I finished 2 trainings that I've been putting on hold for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went to a training yesterday. And then when I got home, I was like, I need to learn more. So I started reading a book on sound tray therapy. So I'm excited to learn more about that.
Maybe we can have an episode where you tell us a little bit more of your role, because I feel like play therapy is something very important, especially for families out there who, I mean, don't really know what play therapy is.
Yeah. And now I'm nervous.
She talks every day now.
Yeah, I mean, I think that would be a good episode to have. I don't know if like people have questions, or especially like if you have children and you're like debating whether a child should have a therapist or not, like talking about that I think is really important, because it doesn't hurt to have someone to talk to, is what I always say.
Yeah,
So,
especially no matter the age. It's go through a lot of stuff too, not only us as adults.
yeah.
They go through a lot of changes, a lot of transitions, so that's nice. I'm saying maybe we can have an episode with you.
Yeah, I mean, we can definitely talk about it.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and get ready for our guest for today. I'm really excited.
I'm so excited for her.
Yeah. Hope you guys enjoy it, and we'll see.
Talk to you later.
Our guest for today is a bilingual licensed clinical social worker with over 17 years of experience. She provides mental health support to children and families. She has focused her career on providing mental health services to individuals seeking healing from complex trauma, such as trauma from immigration or deportation, sexual assault, and child abuse. Not only is she a licensed clinical social worker, but a clinical supervisor and EMDR certified. She believes that creating a safe and trusting environment free of judgment and bias is essential for the therapeutic process. Please welcome our amazing guest for today, Vanessa Robles.
Welcome, Vanessa.
Hello.
¿Cómo estás?
Estoy bien. Thank you. I'm a little nervous, pero
don't worry, me too.
So I'll be taking lots of deep breaths.
Man, I should have brought my fidget stuff.
Oh,
but you can fidget with some of the crystals if you want.
I have fidgets too.
You have fidgets?
I have a little, I use it when I'm in the car with traffic.
I should keep one in my purse. It's a really good idea.
No, yeah, I recommend it so I don't road rage.
Speaking of. Okay. So I guess let's start with, what makes you a chingona and or a llorona? Okay. I think this is such a hard question. Llorona porque I am
I'm a sensitive person, and I didn't grow up being a sensitive person because I feel like maybe not in all, happy families, but all like you're taught to be tough and like brush it off. And so that was definitely not me. But then once I became an adult, it's like I cry at the silliest stuff. Or if my friends are tearing up, I'm also tearing up, and which makes it hard for the job that we do as like a therapist because you can't be crying when your client's crying. But I feel like I definitely am an empath. Like I just feel people's feelings, and it really resonates with me to see someone like in pain or who's having a hard time, and I just want to help them feel better. So that's definitely my Llorona piece. Chingona, I only because I feel like it's braggy that I feel weird talking about it, but I think we should also like love and support ourselves. So I'm gonna try to get past that. But growing up where you are without and you don't have much, and then being able to like I have a career, I have a place to live, I'm getting my doctorate, I'm doing really well in these things. I think the chingona part is like overcoming and being the success story that your ancestors
Mm-hmm. I love that.
Me too.
Yeah.
Very deep.
Can you tell we're therapists?
Yeah.
No, yeah, I agree with that. I think for a long time it's really hard to be like, oh yeah, I did this, I did that, I'm getting my doctorates, I got my master's, and really like feel like super proud of it.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if you guys resonate with this, but I'm just like, that's just something I needed to do. That's another thing that I kind of like. I set a goal to do it, but like no matter what happened, I needed to do it. So it doesn't. I don't know about you guys, but for me, it not that it isn't an accomplishment, but it doesn't feel like it was something that was not that it was so out of reach, but I don't know how to explain it. Like it was just a given that I don't know how I was gonna do it, but I needed to do it. So it doesn't feel like
this big achievement, even though it absolutely is.
Yeah, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like it takes me back in one of our previous episodes. Whenever I was saying, I only have my bachelor's degree, and a friend reached out and she was like, "Girl, don't say
you have a bachelor's degree.
Yeah,
that's amazing."
She was like, "Don't say that you just got a bachelor's degree. Like that's amazing. You know how many people out there can't make it that long." And it made me really think about it. I'm like, I'm really proud of what I have accomplished.
Yeah,
that definitely makes it chingona.
Well, and if we're not our own cheerleaders, then who's going to be? Like, yes, you might have like people in your corner, like your raza, your people, your family. But if you don't have that for yourself, then you're never really going to believe it. It makes those successes feel less like successes, even though they are. And so I know that's something that I struggle with too. Where I still feel very timid about like, oh, I don't want to talk about that because I don't want to seem like so chocante or something like that. And
because we gotta be humble.
We
gotta be humble. Yeah.
Well, ¿de dónde vienes? ¿Cuáles son tus raíces, Vanessa?
So I'm originally from the Rio Grande Valley. Go 956. I'm from Ravenville, which is a tiny town in Melissa County, Texas, down south. But now I've been living in Austin. I'm going to age myself. I've been living in Austin for 24 years now. And
you're not 24?
I'm 25. So I definitely don't call myself an Austinite because you have to be born and raised here to claim that. But I've lived here longer than I lived back home, and so but that's still home. Like, even though I've been here for so long, and I definitely feel like Austin is also my home. When I go back to the Valley, my brother now lives in McAllen, and so I'll go to McAllen to go see him. And it's just like, I don't know, it feels like a warm blanket, like the blanket with the tiger on it, like where it feels like that. Yeah, your San Marcos blanket, where like you're eating your food, everyone's speaking Spanglish. It's like, or maybe you're just speaking Spanish, then you switch. I just love it all. And so anytime I go back home, which I'm trying to do more of, now that we're not in like the crazy lockdown stages of COVID, I feel like I can do more of the getting to go back home and visit family. So, and my family is from Mexico, so when you're saying como de donde eres, I feel like that saying like no soy de aquí ni de allá is very much like it resonates with me. I was raised by my parents, but also my grandmother after my parents split up, and so and she is from San Luis Potosí in Mexico, and so I really feel like, and there's shout out, so I really feel like I'm in this middle place of, yes, I'm American, but I'm also very much claim the Mexicana in me, and I feel very proud of that. And so a lot of times I reference myself que soy Mexicana, even though I know I wasn't born there. But that's just how, that just feels like that's who I am.
Yeah.
So.
Like the corazón es mexicano. Yeah.
You feel that. Well, yes, he's the only Mexican here, I guess you can say. But
that's not true. We're all Mexican.
But like born in Mexico.
Yeah. So, how is college for you? Where did you go? And like, how was it for you being first generation, going to college, and being a Mexican and also a woman? How was that for you?
Complicated. So yeah, being a first gen college student and moving to a city, being from like a little pueblito, because Rainbow is small, y'all. Like it wasn't even 9,000 people before I left. Now they've like broken the 9,000 mark.
Thank you, babies.
I know. So I mean, it was just such a small town, and then trying to navigate everything that you have to do just to get into college. Like I shout out to my senior counselor, Mrs. Bedoya, who she was such a blessing in my life because, and I've messaged her on Facebook since because I wanted her to know like you were such an important part of this journey of where I am now, because I feel all emotional about it because she saw something in me and she got me waivers to be able to like apply for UT, to get into UT. She got me waivers to be able to take my SATs, like to be able to take my AP exams, like other waivers, like all these things that like we couldn't afford it, but without those things, like I wouldn't have gone to UT. I wouldn't have known what to do. And then trying to navigate as a first gen, what do you write in a college essay? Like, what do they want to know? Like, I see the questions and I think I'm a decent writer, but I don't really know what they're looking for. Not having someone who's like done these things before you to tell you, oh, Mija, here's what you need to do. Filling out financial aid applications. Oh my gosh, that is just so complicated. And so I would, like my counselor, she helped me a lot in like, here's what you need. Here's what you ask your mom for. And so I'd be going in like, Mom, I need your paycheck stubs, and I need this so that way I can get this waiver, so that way I can do this. And then she also connected me with like, you would qualify for this scholarship or you could apply for this. And so I was super blessed in that there was someone in my corner who saw the potential in me and was like, I'm going to help lift you up so you can live up to your potential. But not everyone has that. And like, even I have an older brother, like even us talking about our different experiences, he didn't have that. And so even though he was already at UT before I got there, like he had no one who was helping him get all of those things, and it was him having to figure out completely by himself. And so he struggled more so than I did in that way. And I'm just so thankful for Mrs. Bedoya. Thank you.
Everyone needs a Mrs. Bedoya.
Yes.
It brings you back to those teachers, people in your life who have a huge impact on who you are today. Because I have a couple of those too who motivate you that you can do more.
Yes.
Just not because like I can relate with you so much. I did everything, FAFSA, everything on my own, and I had to figure it out. And it was trial and error. Like there were so many things that I did wrong, and I was like, submitting it late or not submitting it right, and like going back and figuring it out is hard.
Yeah.
It is really hard.
Well, and some of the deadlines, because now I'm back in grad school and so I'm applying for financial aid again, and like I missed one of the deadlines because I didn't realize how early you have to turn it in, because it had been so long between when I was last in school and being back in school at 25 years old.
Wow.
No, but it was just like such a struggle again, where it was just almost like a trigger, like a reminder of like, oh my God, yeah, I'm doing this by myself again, even though I've done it before. There's been such a gap between when I filled out a FAFSA form when it was paper and now doing it online. Like there were just so many things, and then me applying where it's like, no, I don't need parent information because I'm a full-grown adult, and so this is all of my information, and where is this? And but yeah, not having someone there to tell you exactly what to do, or to sit with you and be like, okay, Mija, here's what we're going to do today. We're going to fill this out because this is due on this date. That in itself is a struggle. And you were talking about like my experience with, so I went to UT for my bachelor's and my master's, and coming from the Valley where everybody looks like you pretty much, and everyone, not everyone, but most people, they speak Spanglish. They so you can go and you get your food anywhere you want. You have your gente anywhere you go. And then coming to UT and coming to Austin, where it's this big city, especially in comparison to my little town, and it was such a culture shock because suddenly I understood why I was labeled a minority, and before I just was told this, but I didn't really see it. I didn't really understand it. I just knew I wasn't the majority and that I was labeled a minority. But I really felt it, and I felt like I didn't fit in anywhere really. And so luckily, someone who had come to UT a few years before I did, and we were like in band together and some other organizations. She was like, when you come, like, we're going to hang out. I'll show you where your classes are. And so thank you to her too, for just being there. And then we ended up joining a Latina sorority. And so then I got to be with more of mi gente, and so it was like, it was trying to create community for yourself in this big space where it can be hard to figure out, like, where do I fit in with all these people? And so that was really helpful, just getting involved in some organizations. So that way I could find people who I could connect with.
Yeah. I think like with going to college, I think the biggest part of why I was able to make it so far was part of finding that community of like, these are my people. So yeah, I can definitely resonate with that.
Yeah, and I feel like Austin, I grew up here, but I feel like as the years are going, it's getting a little bit more diverse than I think so, right? Like I feel like UT is a very big university that has so many students, not only like Americans, but also from other countries and stuff. So, but everybody is trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
Like it's like everybody's on their own kind of thing, unless it's kind of like look for your people out there. They're not going to come and look for you.
Yes.
It's kind of one of those things. But yeah, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
And you're mentioning that you're getting your doctorate. Are you getting it here also at UT or?
No, so I'm getting my doctorate through the University of Pennsylvania. They have like a hybrid program where you go and you get to meet your professors, and you have like this immersive time where you're on campus, and then you do your classes for like live virtually in the evening. So it's a program that's made for people who still want to work full time, but you want to get your doctorate because you're insane and you think that's possible, because it's really hard. And so that's the program that I'm doing. And so I'm in supposed to be last year. We'll see if I finish my dissertation. I'm in my dissertation year right now. And so classes are done. I'm just doing, like once a month, we do dissertation workshops just so we can make sure like we're on target and getting to learn about like the different things we should be including.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's so amazing.
I'm rooting for you.
Me too.
I want an update for the graduation.
Yes.
We'll be there cheering for you. Well, I feel like that merges our next question.
Yeah.
You talked a little bit about dissertation and your Can you tell our listeners and viewers, what do you do? What do you do for a living? What's your career?
Yeah. So my 9 to 5 is I coordinate social work services for a school district in the area. And so I'm part of a team, and we serve all the families within our district. And so that includes the McKinney-Vento, which is for displaced and unhoused families. It includes foster care students. It includes pregnancy-related services, basic needs services, and then also mental health. So my team does so much, but so much good. And I'm fortunate that I get to kind of lead that team. And then outside of that, I have a small private practice where I only have one client right now. I had a few, and it was like with my program, it was a little too much. And so I have one client, and then I also supervise through my private practice as well for those social workers who have their LMSW and they want to get their clinical licensure. And so I do that through my private practice.
Mm-hmm. Amazing. I'm like, ooh. Yeah, that McKinney-Vento is a hard one. Mm-hmm. For those of you guys that don't know, McKinney-Vento is a law that we have in Texas and in the U.S., and it's for families who are homeless that provides rights to children and the families of the school districts to be able to attend school and have that consistency with them, with that school. And I only know this because I was a McKinney-Vento social worker a couple years ago. Yes. And it's a lot of case management and stuff like that. But that's a lot of work.
It is a lot. That alone is a lot.
You guys have your hands very full.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a lot of grants to kind of keep up to date with.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yesterday I was in a meeting for most of the day just for learning about like foster care students and the opportunities that they have post-graduation. And because foster care is a new area for me, where when I did school social work before this, that wasn't under our responsibilities. It was strictly mental health. And so one of the things that I love about this position that I'm in now is that I'm growing professionally. And sometimes I know for myself before, I was feeling kind of stagnant, and I liked my job. I felt like I was strong at it, but I wanted to be challenged in a different way and flex some different muscles. And so that's where I moved into like this coordinator position. And I love that I'm learning so much. And because it's only going to increase my ability to like help children, to help families in the future, and even through my private practice, if I ever decide to grow that more.
Yeah. And it seems like a lot of this work that you're doing is very trauma focused. So how did you kind of not fall into it, but kind of find yourself in the trauma world?
Trauma has always been a big interest of mine. Growing up back home, where they're in the Rio Grande Valley, at least at the time, and I think it is definitely better now than when I lived down there. There were so few resources when it came to mental health needs for either children or adults. There was like acute care needs, like mental health hospitals and things of that nature, but you really didn't hear about anyone getting counseling or therapy or anything like that. And so when I was younger, there were a few things that happened in my life where I really needed that support for myself, and it wasn't available. And I think it really could have changed who I am right now and being a less anxious person had those things been addressed, in real time. And maybe I'd have better like coping skills and things that I could have used along the way. And thankfully, as an adult, I've engaged in my own therapy, and so I've gotten to such a better place. It was a struggle for a while, and it's interesting how like younger me, I just from my own experience, I was like, I want to help young people who are struggling with the same things, and I don't want them to feel alone. I want them to feel like they have someone there, and I want them to have someone that looks like them and speaks like them too. Because especially moving here to Austin, what I noticed even now, but even more so when I started out in the field, is that there are so few bilingual mental health therapists or clinicians, and so for myself, going to conferences, I really focused my energy on I want to help the toughest population because I'm bilingual. This is a service I can, a higher level service I can provide to mi gente. And so I wanted to do that. And so I really focused a lot on that. But I would go to conferences and trainings and things, and I'd be having people ask me as soon as they knew I was bilingual, they're like, "Are you looking for a job? Oh, we're hiring. We're hiring for this. What do you make now? We could pay more." It was insane how often that would happen. And I never jumped around because of that, because I enjoyed the work I was doing. But that just shows the level of need that's out there for people who are bilingual and really trauma focused.
Yeah.
And part of me doing like the EMDR training and then getting certified is that that's such a high level of service that you can provide that really helps profoundly when it comes to trauma and like really reducing those symptoms like reoccurring. And so I did my training. You do part of it. The way I did it is you do part of it in English, like the kind of like the research content part, and then when you're doing the practicum piece, I did it all in Spanish.
Oh, you can do that.
And that was to make sure, I was like, I know I could do it in English for sure, but let me try to do it in Spanish while in training, because or else I'll be too scared to try to do it otherwise. And there were some people at the training when they originally had asked, like, who's going to need, the Spanish practicum piece. There were a lot more people that raised their hand than when we actually went into it. And I think some people felt timid about their level of Spanish. And that's something that I also have struggled with too, where I'm like, well, I grew up speaking both language, but am I really bilingual? And I am, but I even feel that sometimes because there's a lot of like clinical jargon, academic jargon that gets used, where in some of those spaces, I don't feel like I'm adequate, even though I am.
I feel that.
I feel that too.
Yeah. I mean, even just like the concept of translating. Like yesterday, I have some Spanish speaking clients where I work, and I primarily work with children, but I have to talk to the parents as well. So I was talking to the parents, and I find myself like, when it's just like me and my girls and we're speaking Spanish, like it's just very fluid, right? But whenever I have to like almost use both of my brains at the same time, like there's some words that I get stuck in, and sometimes I feel like less competent because it's hard to translate sometimes. And I don't think that we give ourselves a credit. Like your brain is working times 2 right now.
For sure.
Of like trying to ¿cómo se llama? Translate. Traducir. So it can get really hard, and you're right, like we don't speak proper Spanish. We speak more of that like
Slang Spanish.
Yeah, we speak more of that slang Spanish. But also like a lot of the families that we work with also speak that same slang Spanish.
That is very true, because the other day I was talking as proper as I could in Spanish, and then the parent was like, then I took out my slang words like, okay.
Yes. When I think it makes families feel more comfortable, right? Because it's like, oh, you speak like I do, because like in the mental health world, or if there's a power differential or there's a feeling of that, then that makes people kind of more timid, kind of cower. Where I want to close up a bit. And so if I'm just speaking like I would with my family, like just being normal and not trying to be like all stuffy, like soy and like whatever, it helps break down some of those barriers. Like we're all in this together. This is a team effort. We're working together to try and help your kid.
Yeah, but it's really hard to try to explain those like diagnosis and like the tests or the assessment cuestionarios and like what they're for and things like that, or like even trying to explain symptoms, like that can be very difficult to do in in Spanish when you don't have the words to explain them. Yeah, but so I kind of lost my place.
That's okay.
So with being, first gen in college and that and going into trauma world, what has been, I guess, like your life's purpose now?
So part of I'm trying to think of how to like synthesize it. So part of what I want to do, and like the reason I'm pursuing my doctorate, is I want representation is so important, and so I want to have a seat at the table when decisions are being made about people that speak and look like me. And when it comes to trauma, and when it comes to, like, in my research, I'm doing immigrant related trauma, there is so much that is not understood or known about it, and there's not a lot of research about it. And I want to be part of those spaces when people are talking about how we serve these individuals, what are their needs, and so that's my hope and my goal, is that eventually that I'll be able to be in a space, and I'm not quite sure what that would look like, but I want to be in a role where I can be helping to make decisions that are trauma informed and that are really going to help the immigrant population, because there's so much need there.
Mm-hmm. You're like speaking to my heart right now. So I guess, like, what are your findings right now based on the research that you've made? What kind of trauma are immigrants experiencing when they come to the U.S.?
Mm-hmm. So my focus has mostly been on the immigrant population that is coming from the Central American triad. And so we have a lot of families that are coming from Guatemala, Honduras, and traveling from Central America down into Mexico into the United States. And some of these individuals, some of these families, before I even started my doctorate, like, I was treating in therapy. And so I saw this need, like, oh my gosh, there's so much trauma that is coming with these individuals, and there's so many behaviors that are happening with kids in schools that people aren't really aware what is this about, and they just see this kid as travieso, or like hard to work with, or stubborn, whatever negative connotation they put with the student. It's like, no, this is trauma. What you're seeing is trauma. And if we can get them help, then you won't see this behavior anymore. And you'll see a student who can now sit still and can now listen in class and engage with other students and connect with other students. And so what I'm seeing in the research, and confirms like what I was seeing in practice, is that the research shows that there's like three stages of when trauma is occurring for immigrants. And not for all, of course, but for a big majority who are coming from that Central American triad. And so there's the reason why they left, right? So I've had families who it was gang-related activity, they were being threatened, there was physical and sexual assaults that occurred, and so they had to flee. And so there's that level of trauma, which is already horrible. And then there's the migration piece of trauma. And so as they're traveling thousands of miles to come in hopes of a better life, in hopes of safety for their family, they're experiencing hunger, they're experiencing no water, no shelter, fear of being physically assaulted, sexually assaulted, robbed, you name it. I have children who would tell me how they saw people dead, how they had no money, they were starving, they had, it's just horrific. So they've already left based on these horrific events that are happening. Then they continue to experience this horror as they're coming. And then don't even get me started about if their parents are detained or if they see the detainment happen. It's just compounding that trauma. And then once they get to the United States, if they're fortunate enough to make it here, then there's trying to navigate the different systems we have and just fit in and connect with other people. And when I decided that this is what I wanted to do, it was during the 2016 election, and there was all of these horrible things happening to immigrants where they were being locked in cages, and it's still happening. And I would speak with kids who, they're telling me in Spanish, like, why doesn't the president like me? Why don't people like us? Why do people hate us? And it was heartbreaking. And so that's like another level of trauma that's happening. It's like, I'm here, but I'm not wanted. The systems are not created to help me, even though there are things here to help them. And so, and part of me doing this research is I want to look at, if since in the United States, we provide a free education to children, and a lot of families, they register their kids for school because they don't have to pay for it, and their kids can excel if they have an education. Is if we can provide early school-based interventions for these students where they're getting their mental health and basic needs met, or we're connecting them to services where they can be successful, then maybe they'll graduate. Maybe they'll, get out of poverty and be able to have their trauma treated so they don't stay in that cycle. And so that's really what my focus has been on, and like what I'm seeing in the research, and it just confirms what I was seeing when I was serving these clients too. It's like, this is absolutely what I was seeing, and this is why this is so important.
I got you want to cry.
I know.
No, you're like como un ángel caído del cielo. No, like literally, like your research, I feel it, because I work with families, and right now the Central American families are in high demand because I work for nonprofits, so we do a lot of basic needs and stuff.
Yes.
But also provide them like parent education classes for the parents, and a lot of it is like adaptation, like adapting to this new environment, and knowing don't get me, like there's so many times that parents are like, mejor me quiero regresar.
Yes.
Like it's hard here.
Yes.
I can't find a job. Like they're not paying me what they're supposed to be paying me. Like they're taking advantage of my work.
Yeah, they're exploited.
Yeah, and my child is feeling like they don't belong because they don't speak the language. Like so many things like that, and it just breaks my heart. Like it makes me feel like in a place that I'm grateful for what I have, but also I'm like, I could do more. Especially what you're doing right now, which I'm really happy that you're providing all of that research.
I know.
Thank you.
I know, you're like definitely speaking to my heart. I think like, as in the helping profession that we are in, like we don't just come into this because we decided when we were younger, like, I want to be a therapist. Well, sometimes you do, right?
Yeah.
But I think we become this person that we needed when we were younger. At least that's kind of my perspective of why I became a therapist. I'm like, I'm becoming the adult I needed when I was a little girl. Like that person that helps you. And so I definitely like see myself kind of following those footsteps of like giving back to La Raza. Like I've always thought about like the children who get separated from their parents at such a young age when they come into this country, and all that trauma and attachment that kind of gets disturbed disrupted whenever they are separated. And so, and like you, like I was like in a school system as well, working with young children, and I was like, this child cannot sit through this class because their felt safety, like they're not safe in this country, like they're not safe in this classroom. I mean, I think back into the 2016 election as well, and I mean, I was at Texas State during that time still, and I remember like I was legitimately like scared that year because there was like this sign that people found like in like the restroom stalls, like the Texas State vigilantes, that they were gonna like take down any what was it, like any inclusive group or diversity affirming like group and stuff. So I would be like legitimately like scared to like go to class by myself because there was so much hate in the country, more open hate in the country during that time. Yeah.
Well, and I know for myself, I remember talking with my husband, well, he was my boyfriend at the time, but my husband about, should I start carrying my birth certificate with me? Like, what if I'm pulled over? And because that was all part of it, like it didn't matter, with profiling, it didn't matter what you look like or how you spoke, but they could just say, well, you don't have your papers. So entonces, like, we're going to detain you until you can prove otherwise. But then once you're in detainment, you can't prove anything because you have no access to a phone, or, it's just set up to deport you. And that was something that I legitimately was worried because there were raids that were happening in the Austin area, like near the school where I was at, and because they can't do it at the school, they'd be like across the street, or they'd be waiting by a nearby church, and it was just so scary. And that's because I have my citizenship. I cannot even imagine the fear that my clients were experiencing not having citizenship and just trying to do the best they could for their families and just trying to survive. And then on top of that, fear and them working as hard as they possibly could, they're getting exploited, like you said, where they're not being paid the way they should because they are undocumented, or they have people who are yelling at them or threatening to, I'm going to call la migra on you if you do X, Y, and Z, or if you don't do X, Y, and Z. And just it's the experience that some immigrants have is just horrific, and it's so heartbreaking.
And it's very hard. It is. And like you said, I feel like people are more scared to get the help that they need just because they're like, why will I talk to someone who doesn't know where I'm coming from? Or like, why will I talk to someone in a country that they're probably with them, the people that don't want us?
Yeah.
Like it's very hard.
And also just the fear to even admit that you are undocumented to specific services, like, yes, there are services for people who are undocumented, but also you have to admit that.
Yes.
You have to not necessarily prove it, but you have to fit into specific boxes to be able to get specific services. So even the fear of doing that and trusting, how do we know that you're not going to give this information to other people, to ICE or to...
Oh, for sure. And that's something when I was doing more work with immigrant families. I was a school-based therapist, so it was like a contractor for the school district and providing the therapeutic service. And so I'd need to bring in families to do the interview, so I could get the social history and all of that for a student. And because I was bilingual, I mostly served immigrant families who were Spanish dominant, and I would know that someone didn't feel comfortable telling me their story because they were worried about me, possibly reporting them. So that just became part of what I would say immediately at the beginning. I am not required to report anything regarding citizenship status. The only reason I am going to ask you these questions is because it can help me know what your child has experienced so I can serve them as best as I can. And I was like, you can share as much or as little as you want to with me, but just know the more information you share, the better picture I can get of how I can help your child. I was like, but otherwise, I'm not going to report anything to anybody.
Yeah.
And sometimes you would see parents be like, okay, and then they would start telling me their history or their story or how their journey to the United States, but it needed to be explicitly said every time. So they just understood, your citizenship status does not affect the service you get. I'm not telling anybody about it.
Yeah. So in what you were speaking, you said that there isn't a lot of research done on the trauma that immigrants, experience and is piled up on top of them. But what kind of things have you seen in the children that you work with and in the families that you work with that they struggle the most with here? And I guess the gaps in services that are provided for those families.
What I see is just untreated trauma. So for children, what I've mostly seen is there is trauma related to witnessing something. So it's either them witnessing what occurred in their home country and made them had to flee, or it's them witnessing a parent getting detained, or I had a student who parent was pulled over for something, I don't remember what, and then detained because then they found out they were undocumented. And so there's those experiences where, because there's not a way that we find out that social history when they come into school, we just don't know. And then later I would get a referral for a student to see me because they're struggling in class, they're maybe they're being mean to other students, or they're just not paying attention, whatever the reason was. Then once I had them with me and we were able to talk, and after a couple of sessions of just establishing rapport in a relationship, students would open up about, well, here's what I'm worried about, here's what I can't stop thinking about. It's like, well, of course you can't focus in school if all you're thinking about is, when is my dad going to be released?
So I guess like the primary identificators for a child who is an immigrant who has experienced trauma to even receive therapeutic services is through the school and based on behaviors.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess in a sense, there is also those kids that don't display those
Yes.
aggressive behaviors or disruptive behaviors in the schools that kind of go unseen
Absolutely.
without services, without dealing with all that trauma.
And that's where like that psychoeducational piece I think is so important. So like I would speak with my teachers who taught the bilingual classes, who maybe they had more of our immigrant students or first gen students in their classroom. And so it'd be like, if you see someone who's really withdrawn, if you see someone who's not engaging, if you see because here's what might be happening. Or if they seem like they're wearing the same clothes over and over again, like any of these kind of little indicators where maybe it's not this extroverted, behavior that might get them a disciplinary referral or something. Like, let me know so I can just check in with them and just make sure that they're okay. And then eventually it became, if we get someone who just came from any other country, like, please just let me know just so I can go introduce myself.
And that's something that I guess like social workers or counselors really need to make an emphasis of, because it's not necessarily required by the law to make those.
Yes.
So there's a chance that there's a lot of schools in Texas or even just in the country where they're not screening for these things. And
well, and especially if you don't speak the language, I mean, that's just a huge added barrier. I'm fortunate that I can at least immediately speak with these students and be like, introducing myself in their home language, telling them about what I do in their home language. But then if I didn't speak their home language, I mean, then I would need either to have them with me with like Language Line or have an interpreting service or something. And so that's just like another added barrier. And it's not the fault of anyone, not everyone learns a second language, but it really is a huge barrier.
Maybe the lack of meeting the therapist.
Yes.
It's one of those. Because I feel like usually school counselors or therapists are mostly American or English speaker counselors. So the barrier of not having more out there.
Absolutely.
Of us.
Yeah.
And I think even also like even for the families to even know where to ask for help. Because I mean, like, I hate to admit it, but like in a country where you don't feel accepted and like what like I think that even decreases the willingness to try to find those services or the things. Like I know families who do a lot for trying to find those resources, but also like so many resources are so inaccessible to those families that they're like, why even look for those?
Or a lot of people don't even know, because like I know that here in the US there's so many opportunities, but we don't advertise them. They're just there, but like people have to go and look for them. And I feel like people who come new to the country, if they don't have those resources back home or where they're from, they're gonna be like, well, probably they don't have it here either. And I have seen that as well, where like now that's like lunch is free sometimes, they're like, maybe there's a lot of parts in the country where you have to take your lunch. So you have all of these things of like, oh, well, let me take my lunch. And you're like, no, don't worry about it. Like, it's free. And you're like, what? Like, all of these stuff. I have family who are transitioning to the country too. So it's a little bit of an adaptation, like, adapting to this new rules, you can say.
And so much paperwork that you have to fill out too for all those services that you need to get.
Well, the immigration system alone is so complicated. So even someone who is educated, trying to navigate that system, it is confusing. It's not impossible, but it really feels impossible.
Yeah.
It's rough.
Yeah, I mean, even for people who are, who have the privilege of being educated and going to a secondary, education system. I forgot that word. But like going to college, like even like for example, like even working on like I'm supposed to like get my citizenship soon, I guess. And like even looking into that makes me nervous because all the legal jargon, like even if you mess something up on your documentation, like it needs to be like perfect before you submit it. And that's even with me that I went to college and I know how to read those languages. Like that's really difficult. So even having someone who doesn't really know anything about the country.
Yeah. I was just gonna say, I was thinking about how you were talking about the school services that you provide. One of the things that I was thinking is also the having the resources to get the help. I feel like a lot of parents and families think, oh, es que no tengo dinero. Like, that's expensive. Like, that's a luxury. Like, yo no puedo, like, con eso ahorita. But I feel like a lot, especially in schools, like you said, they're public schools. There are a lot of services that are free for the kids that maybe eventually they can get some help that are affordable for the parents. Do you feel like that is something that it's accessible to the families, or?
Yeah, so one of the reasons that I like through the research that I'm doing that I really want to advocate for school-based services is because everyone's entitled to a free public education in the United States, and so if it's a service provided in school, it will be free. And then it eliminates the barrier of having to try and work around your work schedule to take a child to an agency or to somewhere else. So if we can provide those mental health services at the very least, providing those services in schools, then if I'm working 2, 3 jobs, I'm working overnight and, during the day, I don't really have the time to do that. And it's not because I don't want to or because I don't want my kid to be okay. It's because I'm just trying to survive. And so if we can provide those services in school where the kids are already coming to school, they're already there, they're already going to be there all day, we're feeding them, then let's also take care of their mental well-being so they can be more successful academically, since that's the purpose of schools, right? To give people an education. Well, let's decrease the barriers of them being able to be successful, in that academic setting. And so I think schools are a really great place to do that.
I think so too. Because I hear that a lot. And that was even me too, getting therapy. I was like, that's expensive. Like, I don't have the money or the extra cash for that. And I didn't think it was important until you start seeing your progress and you start seeing your healing as well. That you start emphasizing a little bit more. No, that's important. It's not a luxury; it's a need. Like and especially if we have the opportunity to make it reachable and accessible to our families, it's great. And I'm happy to hear that we have it out there and maybe like not advertise it, but let our families know out there. Hey, like reach out to your school. Ask the counselor.
Well, I think even like giving the families then like that psychoeducation of things to look out for in their children and even themselves that will indicate that they do need extra assistance. Because I mean, like within the Latino community, like we know, like, well, I had the same struggles, but I did it as I was growing up, and I didn't need medicine, and I didn't need a counselor or someone to talk to. And that could also be coming from another country, like like from Honduras and Guatemala, of them kind of having that mindset, like this is just something shitty that happened to me, but like
you move forward or you pick yourself up.
So I guess like what are some things that families or even just teachers can look out for? I know you mentioned like if they might be withdrawn and stuff, but at home you get a totally different child. So I guess what are some things if you know that children might be experiencing at home or even adults themselves that they should be like, okay, maybe I should go talk to someone.
So if you look at like your daily kind of activities and way of just being, so if people are having a hard time connecting with others, that can be an indicator that something's wrong, because there's something that is making that person feel either that I can't trust to connect with someone or I'm incapable of doing it for whatever reason. So that would be an indicator. Changes in eating and sleeping are always big red flags if something's happening. And the hard thing is that it could be more or less, right? It could be if kiddos or adults are eating a lot more, or if they're eating a lot less, just changes in diet. Same thing with sleep. sleeping more, sleeping a lot less, are big indicators as well. Not enjoying the things that the kiddo typically enjoys would also be a big indicator, like something's going on. We should probably have a conversation either with your pediatrician or a mental health provider, because once we start not taking joy in the things that we normally do enjoy, it's a big indicator, like something's going on and we need to explore it. But and of course, like agitation, just getting upset at things that they typically didn't get upset about. So for some students, it can be, well, their paper just has a little tear on it, but they lost it and they're crying and I don't know what's going on. And people see it as like that kid is being dramatic or something like that. It's like, oh, there's probably something else going on underneath that.
Chiflado.
Yes, or está chiflado. Yes. And no, it's like, well, let's look into that more. Like, let's just figure out what might be causing that, because you're right. That is a big reaction for something that is a small thing that happened. So let's explore the why, what's behind that. And I think that can be areas where we miss it. But something I want to make sure to mention is I think there's an important piece to understanding the intergenerational trauma that happens. So we're talking about serving students, but then there's also these parents who have really experienced these horrific things and who are just trying to be the best parent they have despite all this trauma that they are holding and carrying. They're just trying to survive in this new country. And one thing that I think is really important is if we can look at children and families that we serve through that ecological model, which is like you have your client, you have their family, you have their community, and you have all the systems with which they interact. And so if we look at people through that lens, then we will serve all of those systems, and then we can truly get to a place of healing. Because if I'm just helping this kiddo out, but their parent isn't getting any support, then their parent is still going to be struggling. They're still going to be, they might also be increasingly agitated easily, so then they're going to be agitated at their child. And it's not because they're a bad parent, it's just because they have unresolved trauma. And so I think that's a really important piece that we miss when we are serving students, is that we leave the parent kind of out of it and we don't get them services as well. And when I was a school-based therapist, that was the model that we used, which was we would serve anyone that was associated with that student. So I could see a teacher for therapy, I could see the custodian for therapy, I could see the cousin, whoever. And it was amazing because you really got to see healing happen, because healthier teachers, healthier classrooms, healthier students are getting served, teachers are getting served. Everyone has this service that is completely free to them, and they're getting actual therapy and not just like an EAP where it's 3 sessions and then, okay, sorry, like you're done. But it was really treating like the root of what's going on. And that was such a beautiful model. And it's part of what I'm writing about, because I do think that kind of model of truly treating the whole system is so important, because we do end up neglecting these other people that are such key players in this child's life.
I love that model.
Me too. And I feel like it's completely right. In order to help someone, we have to go to the raíz. You know, it's kind of like those kinds of things that if we want to know where the issue, or not the issue, but like where everything is coming from, let's go to like the parent. Like maybe there's something that happened to the parent that now it's passing along to the child. So yeah, definitely.
I think that's such beautiful work that you're doing, and that I think definitely needs a light to be put on. And so I'm glad you're doing it.
Thank you.
I'm really glad you're doing it.
I want you to give yourself a pat on the back every night, every morning.
Give yourself a high five on there, because you're doing great. And I want to be like you when I grow up.
Well, what is one thing that, or maybe if you have more than one, that any advice for any other first gen, second gens, any other Latino community out there that is trying to meet? It's probably there. I want to be like Vanessa, but I don't know how to get there, or like, what is some advice that you give to those people, even ourselves?
Oh goodness. Such a big question. It's a good question. I'd say just believe in yourself. because the cards are stacked against us in being successful. But we are strong people, and really drawing from the strength of our ancestors. Like when for example, when I applied for this position, imposter syndrome is such a huge thing um, in my life, and I was like, am I really qualified for this? I absolutely am, but I just still had all those things in my head. I was like, I don't know if I'll be good enough. I don't know, doubting myself. And then I wrote a note to myself, and I had it next to me while I was interviewing, because it was a Zoom interview. And I was like, I'm going to draw from the strength of my ancestors. And I just like would look at it, and I'm just like, yeah, this is why I'm doing this, is so I can, be successful, and like I was saying earlier, be the dream that my ancestors had for me. And I want that for everyone in our community, is like you absolutely can do the things that you want to do, and it's about trying to find the people who can support you in that. And I know that not everyone has that support system, but even if it's a friend, if it's a teacher, if it's a professor, whoever that is just getting connected within whatever community is that you have, so that way when times are tough, because they're going to be tough, having someone that you can go to and connect with, and who will tell you, hey, you got this. Like, here, let me remind you your why, of why you're doing this. And I know I've had those people in my corner. Like, not gonna lie, there have been times where I've literally been in tears, and I'm like, why am I doing this to myself? I'm working full time. I'm trying to write, work on a dissertation, and it's really freaking hard. And where I've looked at my husband or, family, and I'm like, why am I doing this to myself? And then like my brother or someone would be like, remember your grandma. Like, remember, this is like, you wanted to do this for her. And remember how proud she would be of you if she was still here. And I was like, yeah, she's with me. She sees me. She wanted this for me. Okay, this is why I'm doing this. This is my why.
Mm-hmm. That's beautiful. That is really nice. Well, thank you so much. And when you were saying the people out there who feel like they don't have the support, because I know that fortunately there's some people out there who want to be more and who want to do more, but they don't have the support. This is the whole purpose of this podcast and this community, is to be here for you guys. Reach out to us. Can people reach out to you for any questions or anything like that?
Absolutely, yeah. My website is Robles Emotional Health. And so you can contact me through there. If there's any way that I can be of service to our community, I am happy to do that, and I'm happy to be that for you.
Thank you, Vanessa.
Thank you, Vanessa.
Yes, thank you. And you can reach out to us too.
Yeah,
we can connect you.
We can connect you and to her if you're maybe needing a little push. You're like, she's so badass. I don't know.
Yeah, she's a chingona. Yeah, I mean, and that's, like you said, Edith, I think this is a purpose for our podcast, like giving back to our familia Latina, and just being there and letting us be that big sister, big sibling that will help guide you through any struggle that you might have. And if we don't know the answers, like we got computers now and internet, we can do some research. We can do some research with y'all, even if it's just a call.
Lo googleo.
So yeah, but again, thank you so much. I think this is a conversation that definitely needed to be had today.
Share it to your family members, friends. This was such a great interview episode, and thank you for sharing your research, your career, and your everything. And we're very grateful, and hope to bring you back and maybe talk a little bit more of the other great things that you do, because I know that you do more than just what you just shared today. So thank you, and remember that aquí sí lloramos.
Yes, we do. Thank you.